And welcome back to NostalgiaCast. I'm Darin Lundberg.
And I'm Johnny Craddock.
And today we will be talking about Night Shift from 1982, directed by Ron Howard. We've got another one of my Twitter friends, Jeannette Miller Mickenham. She'll be on to chat with us about that movie. Obviously, though, before we do that, we'll do what we do all the time, is we'll kind of recap our last episode. And last episode, we had Kevin the Critic as our guest. Mm-hmm. Good conversation with him. He picked The Witches from 1990. Directed by Nicholas Roeg. And how did you come down on The Witches? What was your decision?
Well, I thought it could have been remade. I believe, isn't that right?
Yeah. It's getting so jumbled, right?
Yeah, we've done so many recently. I think I had issues with just the way it looked. It was kind of dated looking. There were some other things I didn't like about it. What was it? I can't remember really. I can't remember what I said.
Well, you basically said there are moments that were your brain would check out and like lulls, and the acting was not good.
Yeah. But they were also moments that would draw me back in too. Like I'd be finding myself getting bored, and then something would happen that would draw me back into the movie. And so I think overall I appreciate what they were doing and what it is, but I think it could be remade and it could be a better movie if they did.
Okay. And then how Kevin came down is he obviously it meant something to him. So he came down on Worth Remembering, and he talked about, the special effects and Angelica Houston. And he basically came at it as this would be good for future generations to find out about, like to introduce them to Angelica Houston, to introduce them to the type of filmmaking and storytelling. And that's where I kind of came down to. I just thought that Roeg, he's not my favorite director, but he's very stylish and very idiosyncratic. So he's got his own style. And it was interesting seeing him port that over to a kid's movie and still have it be unnerving and have kind of a sexual tension with Houston's character, even though she's a terrible, ugly witch. There's still a sexuality that she exudes there that maybe makes kids uncomfortable. I don't know. It had that adult edge. And I thought that it was worth remembering as far as that goes, especially when you consider that which I went back and I watched more clips of the Zemeckis witches, and no.
Yeah. Well, I remember what I thought. I thought the story was weak. That's what it was. It was a story for me. Like, I just thought it was kind of a stupid idea for a story. Yeah. It had a good beginning, and it kind of could have been something with, what it started out with. Mm-hmm. If they had kept that premise and kept with that, I would have liked it a whole lot better. But because it suddenly switched and the whole plot was different, and it was kind of a silly plot, I kind of went, okay, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So didn't really take you to where you wanted to go, right?
Right. It led me on and then cut me off.
Okay, right. Well, before we cut to the chase here, we're talking about getting you where you need to go. I noticed that you do not have your movies behind you. It's a different setup. What's going on in your life over there, brother?
Well, I threw them all away. I got tired of them.
Just done. I'm done with movies there. I'm sick of them.
Yeah, who needs them? No, I just boxed them up, and I'm going to move to Texas. So
just decided on a whim. Just
because.
No, we've talked about how when you moved to New York, it was because of a big job switch and a life change, and it's just what you need to do again, right? And you'll just be closer to us and not have to travel so far. And
definitely plan on visiting home more often. So maybe we can be in the same room again.
Okay. That would be nice. But again, it's kind of fun getting used to the Zoom atmosphere, I think, too. Yeah. It's interesting being able to do that. But yeah, okay. So again, you'll still be in New York for the next couple of weeks, right? You're not beginning of May, I think you're.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll still have time to record. So yeah. All right. So let's not worry about what your house looks like. It's got to be filled with cardboard boxes full of junk, right? Okay.
It's in disarray, yes.
Okay. Well, we'll get your mind off of that and we'll chat Night Shift. But first, let's go ahead and watch the trailer.
Watch it!
Chuck Lumley works nights. He's a civil servant. And so is Bill. Chuck and Bill have a very strange partnership. They also have a happy staff. Their business is growing. Their customers have no complaints. And the future looks good. However, Chuck is a little too serious about his work. So, Bill is teaching him to take things easier. After all, night work can be fun. You just have to know where to look for it. Night shift. It makes the day seem dead by comparison.
Okay, so Night Shift, 1982, Ron Howard starring Henry Winkler, Michael Keaton, Shelley Long, Richard Belzer's in there for some reason. Anyway,
Clint Howard.
We can't forget Clint Howard. There can't be a Ron Howard movie without that. So, John, we wanted to welcome our next guest. We want to welcome actor, director, film critic, blogger, podcaster extraordinaire, Jeannette Mickenham. Right? Did I get that? I got that right? That's a lot of syllables.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Again, she is one of my friends on Twitter, one of the few people that, pay attention to me and likes my annoying tweets. So that's another person. Yeah, there she goes. I put it out there and I said, would anybody like to be on? And Jeannette was, again, one of the first few that lunged at that. And so I appreciate that. So welcome, Jeannette.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Okay, good.
If you can't tell, I am in theme.
You were saying something about your hair. You couldn't quite get the curls of Shelley Long.
No,
is that what you're?
My curling iron was not cooperating, so I do not have the full Shelley Long hair. I'm very disappointed, but I did try to recreate the streetwalker look that she starts out as with the eyeshadow, and the blush is not very defined as it is here, and my shiny red lips.
Right. Well, I'm trying to make it a compliment, but I don't know if it's going to come off as rude, but you look great. So
Awesome.
I don't know if,
a few dollars. I can still do it.
You can. That's good. We appreciate that. So,
Yeah.
you're familiar with our podcast, but we want to get more familiar with you. If you wanted to explain a little bit about yourself, again, I know and we want to talk about theater and stuff like that Johnny and I grew up on and we're a part of. So how, and again, you have your AKA Jeannette website. Yeah. Before that, you had your squeakyspeakshermind.com website.
Yes.
You've been on podcasts like Pulp Serial and Cinema Recall. And what was the other one? The Spoony Bard's Oral Theater, which I thought was great.
Oh my gosh, you have dug. I feel like I'm on Inside the Actor Studio all of a sudden.
Well, what is your favorite? What's your favorite swear word?
Well, it's cunt.
Oh.
I don't say it very much, but I like the way it sounds, and it's not used. Everybody does all those other fun, colorful ones, but that one packs a punch. I really like.
Yes, it does.
Left this a little speechless ourselves. So so that's great.
Hey, all right.
So again, and again, the Majestic Theater, and you're involved in that with communities. If you wanted to, again, let our listeners know and apprise us in your situation and how you grew up and how you came to be and your POV and everything. Tell us about you.
Oh, okay. Well, theatrically and in the entertainment, I've lived in California, in LA, and did voiceover there and did some extras work, and mostly as reconnaissance to get an idea of that process, because I did theater growing up through elementary and middle school, high school, and that sort of thing. And then life took a different direction. And so I stayed in that peripheral, every now and then going and working on a TV or film or something like that, just to stay connected, and started writing short scenes for actors, and then started producing actor showcases in LA. And so it was really more behind the scenes. I think that's where I like being the most is when I'm creating, writing, directing, having that vision come to alive on stage, all the props, the sets, the costumes, and just bossing everybody around, telling them where to be, what to do, when to do it. The level of control that I get in creating and bringing something to life just really gets me excited. So in 2009, I moved to Oregon, and took a few years, but then I found the Majestic Theater in 2014 and got cast in Les Mis. And I didn't think I was going to get cast. I had a cover band at the time, and I thought, oh my gosh, it'd be so much fun to do a musical, because I'd been away from it for a long time. And I was like, they're never going to cast me. I'm a rock and roll singer. And then I got the phone call, and I was like, oh no, okay, sure, what the heck, I'll do it. And they're like the mafia. Majestic Theater is like the mafia. Once you are in there, you cannot get out. You're just there forever, doing show after show after show after show. And that's literally what I've been doing. I'm either in the show, directing the show, doing light design, sound design, writing, something with that theater. So, and then a couple years ago, I started the Squeaky Speaks Her Mind blog, and nobody knew it was me. And that was kind of the reason that I did that. My nickname growing up was Squeaky. And so I was like, I could be incognito, and I was doing mostly theater critic, theater review. And then people started catching on, because we don't have a local theater critic. And so people started catching on, and then they would see me at the show, and they would come to see me at intermission, like, how are we doing so far? And I'm like, it was really weird, but it was really cool at the same time. And then I got talked into revamping it and letting people know who it's really me. So that's how I got to be AKA Jeannette.
Okay, awesome. That's
a lot of information.
Yeah, well, Jonny was a little more heavy into theater than I mean, in high school, Jonny and I were really, really heavy into theater. We talked about that on the podcast before, especially during the Few Good Men episode. And then I kind of fell away from it, even though I still have that itch every now and then. And Jonny kept on, writing and starring in plays and directing plays and stuff like that. But as far as like your history with acting, and I know you said you got in Les Miserables and stuff like that, but as far as acting and directing and stuff, what has been your most like enriching experience as like a director, as an actor?
Well, my first main stage show, I was a senior in high school, and was called Footlight Frenzy, which is similar to Noises Off, but it's a lot less well known. But then my first show here in Oregon was Picasso at the Lapin Agile, written by Steve Martin, whom I adore. It was his first play that he wrote in 1995, I believe. And I had been carrying it around for like 20 years, because I think it was 2016 that I was able to put it on here in Oregon. And that was such a huge accomplishment, because I love that play so much. It's brilliantly written. It's hilarious. He's all about, I don't know how familiar you are with Steve Martin, but he like sets you up for a joke that pays off like 20 pages later, and you'll be, oh my, the way he layers his comedy, and it's so smart. It's a really, really good show. And the other, I would say, last year during the coronavirus pandemic, everything was shut down. I know we're still shut down, but they started doing Zoom theater with the Majestic, and they allowed writers to submit their own material. And so I actually got some of my recent material into a Zoom theater, which is really hard to do. I'm sure Jonny knows, as a writer, it's hard to get your stuff out there. It's hard to get original work because people, they're like, well, we want to sell tickets. Does anybody know you? It's like, is anyone going to buy a ticket to the show? Like, we don't even really know you if it doesn't have, that name recognition. And so this was a really great opportunity. I'm really proud of, I did some adaptations this past year that were fantastic, got amazing reviews, and just my original work. So I would say that I would say those are my most recent, the things I'm most proud of right now.
Okay. And then you mentioned a few things. We did do an episode on Noises Off. I am surprised I forgot to mention that. That was one of the few episodes. Jonny and I, like I said, we're childhood friends. We met in junior high school and we've been friends. We bonded over movies, bonded over plays, stuff like that. And so, yeah, we've been, forever doing that kind of stuff. And then you mentioned Steve Martin. We did Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. We did Three Amigos, and that allowed me to talk about my obsession with Steve Martin. And I agree with you. It's just the way that the writing is so layered, and he's so smart and he's so droll, and it's not, sometimes he goes for the cheap laugh, which is what everybody does, but I think he's more, the patented humor that he has is more of the smart, the smart, like brain, the thinker kind of wit.
Yes.
So, all the stuff that she's talking about, Jonny, does that bring back any memories of you directing and do you?
Oh yeah, for sure. Real quick though, I have a question, Jeannette. What part did you play in Les Mis? I'm curious what part you played.
I was whore number 4.
Okay.
Actually, I was in the ladies stage ensemble, so I was pretty much in almost every scene of the show. But people most remember me, if they've seen the show, they most remember me as the whore number 4 because I was pregnant. I had a huge pregnant belly. And so people were like, weren't you like, how do I know you? And I was like, oh, did you see that? Yeah. Oh, I was the pregnant whore. Oh yeah, that's right. And so, yeah.
I guess that's kind of ironic to be pregnant and be called, be a whore in a play, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jonny, what kind of experiences does that bring up with you? And what, it just seems like we've got a lot in common. It's funny, like Jeannette, you're talking, it's like, oh my gosh,
yeah. Well, it's funny. I mentioned that I'm moving, and that's why you don't see my movies on the wall anymore. But anyway, while going through my stuff today, I actually found one of my old headshots from my college days, and I looked in the back and saw my resume with all the plays I'd been in, and I was like, oh my gosh, all those memories come flooding back, and it was fun. And I think I was thinking about it, and my favorite play that I can think of that we've been in together, Darin, has got to be Land La Mancha. And we've talked about it before on the podcast, but that was such a fun play to be a part of. And it was one of those plays and one of those experiences where everything came together. Everybody just did an amazing job, and there was this energy and there was this excitement about it. And when that happens, when everything comes together, there's nothing like it. And when the crowd gets into it, when they get that, that applause at the end, there's nothing like it. So it's fun to kind of relive those memories and think back at all those experiences that we had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm kind of jealous, Jeannette, because again, life is kind of getting in the way, and you're still kind of living that dream. You're able to do those things. And Jonny and I are Johnny's he said he's in the middle of a move. He's moving kind of closer. What is it? Midwest? How would you describe Texas?
Yeah, I guess South,
okay,
Midwest,
Central, something like that. So yeah, so things keep getting in the way. So yeah, we're jealous that you're able to still be able to do that stuff.
That is the thing about Zoom, and when we had this huge season planned, and then everything got shut down, and we have this amazing girl, her name is Rachel Kohler, who does the Spoonie Bard. She was one of the gals you probably heard, one of the hosts of Spoonie Bard. And she's like, I wonder if we could just do a Zoom, we could figure out a Zoom theater thing. And the theater said, yeah, sure, go for it. And so we were doing all these public domain shows. But the cool thing is we had people from all over the world in those Zoom theaters. I can't remember. I think it was Midsummer Night's Dream or Cymbeline or something. And one of the gals was in Shanghai, China, that was in our show.
Oh,
We had people in different New York, we had people in Washington, we had people all over the world, literally. So you guys can do Zoom theater. If you've got a, you can go into Majestic and see what they're casting and you audition, you can be doing some Zoom theater. You can live your dream right now.
interesting.
Be like me and living your dream.
That would be great.
Spark that theater.
That was one of the things, because when I found that, like, the Facebook Now, is that what it, or Facebook Live, Facebook Now, anyway. When I found that on your website, I texted Johnny with those. Look at this. Look at all this. Like, they've been doing like Zoom meetings and doing plays. That, how interesting. And that's the thing with, COVID and everything. But the Zoom and the way everybody's doing these, not just Zoom, but everything out there. Being able to do these group things, and it's really clever and really imaginative, being able to do plays and still have the same. It's kind of the new normal, I guess, except you don't want it to be. It's not quite the same, but at least you're still doing it.
Well, the other good thing about it is there were people cast who never would have been cast. I mean, let's be totally honest here. Theater is very cliquey, and you can see the same people in shows, show after show after show. And people who are have physical limitations, they're often not cast because the staging or something like that, like if you're in a wheelchair or something like that, there's a lot of different things that some people just don't get cast for, or certain ethnicities, or just different things. And what has been able to happen, which is so exciting, is all of those people have been cast in shows all last year and into this year. And so it's so exciting because we've had gender bending shows. We've had people with all varying levels of disability. And I don't know if disability is, there's all kinds of physical limitations or just all kinds of things that we've had interracial couples, we've had gender swaps, we've had so many things and plays that wouldn't have been accepted onto the main stage for various reasons, that have been able to be done here through our Zoom theater. And so I think that's exciting, and I hope that sticks.
Yeah. So that's interesting. It's not just, because I was thinking, well, because you mentioned that people that wouldn't usually do this end up doing this. And I was thinking top of my head, because stage fright, like, it's just something they're not able to do. And now being in their comfort of their homes and having their green screens behind them, being able to put images up, it gives them the freedom to kind of catch that bug. But I love that idea of getting people with disabilities who aren't able to traverse on stage.
Right.
To be given opportunities like that. That is fascinating.
Well, and you have the script right there next to it on the screen. So, you don't have to be fully memorized. So if you're scared about that, it just opens the door to so many things. And it's so exciting because I've seen people grow so much in their skills and just opening up and letting themselves be totally wacko, or just totally out there, bawling their eyes out for a scene. It's so fantastic. So I'm really hoping that stays around even when things open up and those people still get chances to express themselves, because it's pretty exciting.
Awesome. Yeah. And at the end, when we're done talking about our movie, we'll go ahead and I want to give you a chance to link everybody and let everybody see what you're doing. I think it's nice being able to have that available and just, again, kind of catch that bug and see what interesting things. Johnny, was there anything you wanted to add to our theater conversation?
No, I don't think so. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Yeah. It's again, it is fun talking about, like you two were talking about, when everything's clicking and you're up on stage and it's just the illusion that you're giving off, and there's nothing like it. So, that's definitely a bug that's worth catching, I guess you could say. But if we want to kind of switch to night shift, Jeannette, what we usually do is, like, again, the point of NostalgiaCast is to kind of not pick movies that we love in our childhood that still, like, Star Wars would not be something, and we've talked about that before, Johnny and I that's not something we want to cover, because what new conversations can you add to that? So we're more of like, you're walking in Walmart and you walk past the $5 bin and you see a movie like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen that in 20 years. It's $5. Why don't I go ahead and pick that up? And then you watch it and you're like, what is this? Or it's better than you thought it was, whatever would have, than it ever was. So that's kind of the point of here. And I guess, do you remember the movies? You gave me a trio of movies.
I gave you a super long list. No, I don't remember, but I gave you a super long list because you said childhood and I thought, okay, 17. That's about a good,
Yeah.
And so I started going through the years, and I mean, actually Night Shift came up first. It just popped in and I was like, no, let me look to see what else came out, and see if there's something that might be more fun. And I just kept coming back to that. But it was a really long list. I could probably look it up.
Yeah. And I remember I remember we were talking about that. And I think Night Shift was the one that kept popping up for me too, because it's just worth, revisiting.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure it would be made today.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Thank God It's Friday was on my list.
Okay.
With Donna Summer.
Right.
You guys dodged a bullet. That's a good movie.
Yeah, that's something didn't have a real connection
16
to.
Candles, but that one you guys I think talked about.
Yeah, during our Ferris Bueller episode, we talked about John Hughes, and that's one of the ones that we talked about, I believe.
The Rescuers.
Yeah. Disney.
The little animated film. Arthur with Dudley Moore was on that list.
Yep.
King Kong 76 was on that list.
Yeah. So what was it about what Night Shift? I mean, what's your experience with that? What made this the movie that you kept coming back to for tonight?
What is it? I'm not sure that the script could be better. I know you guys may think differently. I'm not sure yet. We're going to find out. But to me, that from the beginning to the end, it just seamlessly goes together. There's quotable lines, so many quotable lines, so many quotable moments. I think I was 12 when it came out, which is kind of weird. Seeing it at such a young age. But my life at the time, it wouldn't have been unusual for me to see this movie that young. And also there's very little nudity for a movie about prostitution. There's very little nudity. There's only a couple of scenes where you actually see anything.
And they come relatively late too. I noticed that for a while. I was like, why is this rated R? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, for being an adult themed film, I don't know. I just really connected to it. I've been quoting this film for forever and ever. And whenever I can get a chance to slip in something from that movie, it's kind of weird. It just sits in the back of my mind. It's just been sitting there for a long, long time. And so I'm not sure what it is. I think Shelley Long is a little bit underrated. And she's pretty versatile, even though she doesn't physically change much in any of her films.
Mm-hmm.
She still is slightly different. I'm not sure what it is about her.
Right.
But I don't know. I just really, it just got under my skin and I can't.
Right. Well, you talked about you saw it maybe when you were 12, and I don't have a strong memory of my connection to this, but I do know that I saw it relatively early, which again is weird. But as I've talked about before, my mom, I'm an only child, and so my mom was working and she'd leave me with movies and she would just grab movies. She didn't know what she was grabbing. And I remember she left me with Friday the 13th and Lethal Weapon one night. And so
nice.
And I guess with Friday the 13th, it was weird because it's one of those movies where it didn't as an 8 or a 10-year-old, it was well, this is so fake. Even then, so it didn't bother me. So I guess she didn't scar me in that way. But I remember Keaton. I remember Michael Keaton vividly but I didn't remember the surrounding tissue of the movie. So there wasn't, I know I'd seen it. And that was the one reason why I wanted to rewatch it, because again, Johnny and I have talked about being Michael Keaton fans. And so that was a draw. Johnny, what's been your experience with this movie, if any?
Yeah, kind of like you, Darin. I remember it, but not very well. I remember I first saw it with my grandpa for some reason. Like, I don't know why I was sitting with my grandpa when I watched it, but I was, and we watched it together. And I was really young. So again, I didn't see it again until just, tonight. So, like I say, my memory is hazy. I don't remember very much about it. I knew Michael Keaton was in it. I didn't know much else. I forgot about Henry Winkler. I forgot it was a Ron Howard movie. All that stuff. So it was fun to watch it again. And I enjoyed it. I had fun watching it. It was good.
Yeah, I was telling Jeannette and I were talking earlier, and just watching like a bunch of 80s movies in a row, it's like you forget that there are good movies out there. There are some that don't stand up, and there are some that are really. And Jeannette, you mentioned that you don't know if this is being made today. I think it would have to be a little raunchier, I guess. But it's hard in today's age to be able to go that far without offending people's sensibilities.
Well, I think in order for it to be made today, we would have to apply tragic backstories to Belinda's character. That is completely unnecessary. I mean, there's just things that I feel like a filmmaker today would try to justify why she's a prostitute, with some tragic backstory. And then there's
as opposed to just being something that she does, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because that's how it is right now. We don't need to know how she got there, how any of the women got there. They just are.
Yeah, I think that may be an issue a lot of the times with movies. It's like when you watch a movie, you want to deal with what's like the here and now, right? Not really what's going on. You don't want to dwell too much on I always come back to comparing it to Speed versus a movie called Daylight with Sylvester Stallone, where the Keanu Reeves character in Speed has no backstory. You know everything about him just from what he does, and you're in with him. But then in Daylight, you have to have this whole backstory about Stallone's character, like tragically, like couldn't save people, and and it kind of bogs the movie down. You don't need that stuff because that's not what you're involved with.
I think with a movie like this, though, you could use that backstory. I think it would help the story better. You might get more involved with the characters if you knew their backstory. Yeah. So with movies like this, I think it's more important to have that character development. And movies like Daylight and Speed, I don't think you need it. Okay. But in movies like this one, you might need that character development. Well,
I think too, what Jeanette's saying is, there's enough of a hint of their past that what's going on. Especially Keaton has a moment where they're all around that Christmas tree, and there's all of a sudden out of nowhere, there's the heartfelt, that moment where he talks about his mom and his dad, and how his dad left because they were too ugly for him, stuff like that. So I like that they sneak in that backstory instead of making it like so heavy-handed and
yes, but I think I would like it. I would like the other two characters more if they did that. Okay. They don't do that enough with Belinda and what's his name, Chuck.
Yeah. Well, on that front, I think the way that I would agree with you is, to me, watching this movie, it was Keaton's show. Like, the reason the movie is so entertaining is because of him. And the Winkler Long stuff it's fine. There's nothing really wrong with it. It's just not as strong as the Keaton stuff.
Yeah, my note that I made was that they were kind of one-note characters, but what Keaton was more three-dimensional.
Yeah.
He was more developed.
He's bringing a lot to it. Well, something we want to talk about, again, we kind of want to have our own little topic. But Jeannette, you wanted to talk about the writing, right? What is it about the writing that you wanted to talk about? First of all, the screenplay by Lowell Gantz and Babalu Mandel, they went on to write Splash. They wrote Parenthood for Ron Howard, City Slickers, A League of Their Own. They've been pretty prolific. Yeah. And I've liked almost everything they've done. But what did you want to talk about as far as writing goes, Jeannette?
Well, speaking of the writers, this script was based on an idea that Brian Grazer had after reading an article about a prostitution ring in the city morgue. And so he's like, oh my gosh, that would be a great idea. And so he talked to Ron Howard, and because they had met recently and they wanted to work together, so they were bringing ideas. Yeah. Ron Howard was still working on Happy Days with Henry Winkler, and the writers were actually writing Happy Days. And so they shot this film while still working on Happy Days, which I found really interesting because Happy Days is so clean cut, but when you look at the script for Night Shift, it still is very clean, but it's just kind of wrapped up. When you watch, we talk about the nudity being really late in the film, but each scene, the writing is so good that you can get through visuals. Like in the very opening, we don't need to know a whole lot about Franklin. We just need to have these guys, he's being chased, mixed in with the two basketball players with that thud. I wrote that as one of my notes because I loved the sound of that basketball thud, mixed in and edited in with this whole Franklin thing and how those two come together and pay up, sucker. So, and the language sounded real to me. You know, one of the things I love about certain scripts is when the conversations sound like real conversations and they're played straight. And so that helps with the humor, just naturally comes through. And it's like, can you tell me how you're connected to the deceased? He was my Avon lady. You know, it just seems something like so natural for Belinda to say as a retort, like, what do you mean? You know?
Right.
Of course. And so, and each character had their own voice. So the writers really, sometimes with screenwriting or with plays, the characters kind of blend. And if you close your eyes, or if you're just reading it off the page and you take the characters' names off, if you can't tell the difference between who is speaking, there's a problem with the writer or with the writing. So with this film, I really liked that each character had specific ways of specific languages and specific things that only they would say, or, you know, so they each had a really strong voice of their own and development. I didn't feel like there were any holes in the story. Everything happened step by step by step, and it progressed naturally. It didn't feel forced to me. It felt like it just flowed from one thing to the next. So it was like, of course they are neighbors. Of course he's gonna stumble upon her in the elevator and she's beaten up. And then we have little Shannon Doherty, mugger. You know, of course, love brokers. Of course we're gonna have that. Oh, we should be pimps, you know. Okay. And then when you talked about that movie earlier with James Spader when we were first talking, and James Spader was the first thing that popped into my head, because this is way before his time. And so I'm thinking that James Spader saw Night Shift and then used it inspiration when Michael Keaton, when Billy Blaze comes in and he's all dressed with his collar up and he's going to do the presentation, and he kind of comes in and he's like that. You know, he comes in and I was like, oh my God, that was James Spader that just walked in on screen. But I just feel like everything naturally progressed. The character arcs naturally progressed. The relationship between Belinda and Chuck was not forced for me. It didn't feel forced. I felt like the scene with Chuck and Bill after he's like, would you just shut up?
You telling me to shut up?
I'm telling you to shut up. I will tell your recorder so that you don't forget. Hello, this is Chuck to remind Bill to shut up. You know, this used to be such a quiet place before you got here. You talk too much.
And then there's this moment where he's filing, and then Bill comes and he opens the door and he's like, I thought we were friends. There's so many vulnerable moments and so many highs and lows and with all of the characters. And I feel like they go through all this range of awkwardness or excitement or anxiety or gratefulness, and nothing felt like it was a line that didn't fit. And usually my brain's like, that character wouldn't say that. It's just like an alarm goes off. And I don't feel that way at all with this movie. Like everything just fell right into place for me.
Okay. No, that's good. Jonny, what do you think about that? How did you feel watching the progression of the characters and things like that?
Well, with regards to the script, actually, I think it was well written. I didn't have much problem with it. I really enjoyed Michael Keaton's dialogue. I thought he had the best dialogue. He was comic relief, obviously, so he had the best, the funny lines and the quotable lines, like we talked about. And I like the yin and yang, the odd couple kind of scenario we got going with, Keaton and Winkler. I think I like that. I like seeing that dynamic play out. But like I mentioned before, I really didn't care much for Belinda for some reason, maybe because it's just Shelley Long being Shelley Long. And I feel like I'm watching Cheers whenever she's on screen. You know what I mean? That's just kind of what I go back to. And then it's just hard seeing the Fonz not be the Fonz. And so there's that. But I like Henry Winkler. And I want to say this real quick. I recently saw a HBO series called Barry. And Henry Winkler's in that. Is a really great job in the role he plays in that. He's like a drama teacher. It's really, really great. So I like him. I like as an actor. But in this movie, for some reason, he wasn't hitting it for me. Like I was having a hard time getting interested in his character. But as far as the script goes, it's good. My only issue with it is there are these lulls in it where it's kind of slow going. Yes, things kind of move forward and they progress, and you have the witty dialogue and stuff, and the story's fine. It's just there are moments where you kind of go, okay, what's next? Okay, you want to kind of like move it along, and it kind of like takes a little bit to get to the next scene. But other than that, it's good. I really enjoy it.
Okay. The thing that I noticed with the script, again, I'm a big fan of Gans and I have to say Babaloo Mandel. I have to say his whole name. I can't just say his last name. But I'm a big fan of them because of the humanity. They're funny, and there's so much. The thing that I really enjoyed in this movie was the humor that kind of comes out of nowhere. Like Jeannette, you mentioned when pay up, sucker. You're like, they're even after they've witnessed a guy like die horrifically right in front of them. I like the I've got them all here. I've got the I like that. Chuck is in bed with Charlotte and she's eating like the puff, and I wrote down, so Charlotte is George Costanza. You know what I mean from that episode. I like the Shannon Doherty part. I like where they come in and they beat him up with the Girl Scout cookies. Just the sound of the dog out when she kicks him out of her apartment, that kind of thing. And for some reason at the end when they're at that the new brothel, Paradise Found. There's a gag where you walk past and there's a nude woman giving a guy a shoe shine, and like what kind of gag is that? You know what I mean? And so it's loaded with these little gags that make it original and unique, but it's also got like the joke that I really laughed at was when Chuck is left behind on the subway, and it's Ron Howard doing a cameo. You don't see his face, but he walks up playing the saxophone in his face, and Chuck gives him the money, but then the saxophone keeps playing, and so Chuck gets out a checkbook and starts writing him a check, and I died. And the reason it's not just funny because it's off kilter, it's funny because it suits his character. That is something that he would do if he didn't have any more money. He's such a nebbish and such a pushover that is something he would do. And I just like the humor, because we've talked about movies before where the humor was, silly and didn't really have any basis in reality and wasn't character based, and which is fine. But this kind of character based humor is what I like a lot more. And it's not just funny, but it's also smart when you think about it. And then you go back again, like, we don't get, I agree with Jonny, like the Chuck character and the Belinda character. If there had been, because we know he was a stockbroker and he couldn't handle the stress. And so that's why he became a mortgage tenant. But then it's just more stress. And then we don't know anything about her besides the fact that she's a call girl. And what gets you on her side is when the elevator opens and she's lying on the floor and she's been beat up. And that gets you her, maybe not so much empathize, but you sympathize with her. And so that's a connection. So I agree that there's not much backstory to find out what got them to this point. And it's more Keaton coming in and just being that force of nature and taking everything over. And that's where your eyes go. And it doesn't help that every line Keaton says, every line out of his mouth is just pure gold. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He's not just annoying, but he's funny annoying. And I liked how they kind of got along. And then it's Bill that pushes Chuck to be assertive for the first time. Did you guys notice that?
Man.
Yeah, where he tells him, shut up. And then it kind of comes out of nowhere, but you can tell because his stress is getting to him. And then it brings you back because he goes to the morgue, the slab, and, Bill's inside and he pulls him out and he's listening to it. And they have that conversation and he tries to go tuck himself back in and they have a connection finally. Bill says, you never told me what your fiance's name is. And he says, Charlotte. And they're starting to connect. And it's that humanness. And later, like we talked about, where they're around the Christmas tree and Bill has, he talks about his dad left him because they weren't ugly enough. And then he talks into his microphone. This is Bill, and like microphone recorder. This is Bill. Call mom and wish her a Merry Christmas. And it's those moments that really get you and puts it above where a normal comedy would be.
It balances those moments, balance Bill's other moments. We got teenage girls in here.
The wild and crazy stuff, right?
Yeah. He has so many great moments. And for him, I think this is his first real major part. So for him to make such an impact, it's pretty phenomenal, I think.
Yeah. So was there anything else you wanted to talk about with the writing?
I think other than quoting it from start to finish, all of Bill's, all the scenes, I think the timing was great. I think the character developments were good. Even I know that Belinda and Chuck don't have a lot of flash, but I also feel like we needed to keep it balanced that way. Otherwise, you've just got energy up, and you don't have anything really balancing that out. And so I think the relationship with Belinda and Chuck, and then they have some really neat connections and really neat moments together. And with her making breakfast in her underwear, and them in the bathtub, hey, I don't wear a watch. And then when they fight and they say, he said, I thought you would quit. How am I going to quit? What am I supposed to do? And she's like, why don't you quit? And he says, I'm not a whore. And she's like, right, you're a pimp. And it was so perfect. I felt like the writing was just so right on. And then later, as another moment with Bill being there for Belinda and saying, you guys, he thought you were in love, So I just love all of the moments. So I feel like, script was really good for me.
Okay, a lot of humanness there.
Yeah.
Johnny, you and I have talked before. We did an episode. What was it, Willow? That was our Ron Howard episode that we did.
Yeah.
And we talked briefly. I came down more on the side that I've always felt that Ron Howard is more of a vanilla director. I know that he does what he needs to do. He's not terrible. I don't want that to come across. He's fine. I'm just never impressed. I think Apollo 13 is probably I'm most impressed because that's his most movie with the technology, but his best movie might be Parenthood because his theme of family that he always has in his movies, that works. And there's so much truth. And again, that's a Ganson Mandel script. There's so much truth in there that I just think it works. But if it was made for TV, there would be no difference. There's nothing really cinematic about that movie. And like I said, I don't want to come down on a negative side. I just thought, Ron Howard's fine. I was interested in watching this, that's fine. But I thought from the very beginning, it was more like some of the notes that I had, there's steam coming up from the streets. You can see the rain, the mood, the lighting is dark. I just thought it was a little more stylish. And it's weird coming in 82, being a little more stylish than a current Ron Howard movie. So I just thought there was, And we've talked before too about how you don't want to be too flashy because you just want to be able to sit back and capture the comedy and the dialogue. But I just thought there was more of an atmosphere to the direction this time. And do you feel that it's, first of all, do you both disagree with me? Do you agree with me? Is it more Ron Howard's does he have more talent back then than he does now? Jeannette, what do you think the difference is with like Ron Howard as director? How do you feel about him, and how do you feel about him in this versus others that he's directed?
I totally agree about the atmosphere. When this movie starts and it opens up with that shiny street and the steam coming up out of the map, you know instantly you're in New York. And then the saxophone plays. It's like quintessential nighttime in New York. And so I feel like when he was prepping for this movie and going through the visualizations and the storyboards, it's like, he must have done like research watching Taxi Driver and just, different, other movies set in New York. And because I feel like he started out with that real gritty, but just perfection, with New York. And I would agree, it is very stylized, especially in the very beginning, because the way that it's edited, I think I said before, with the two basketball players. So you're getting this guy running and the car chasing through these little city streets, but then you've got these two guys playing basketball, and the sound, the things that he does with sound and the special effects and the music and Quarter Flash, singing, doing that. So I feel like it really carried through with the colors and everything throughout the whole movie. There was a lot of, shiny, things were big, they were glittery. And then all the way to the end with Paradise Found. I mean, how gaudy is that place? Like, it's just the palm trees, and it feels like she's in there wearing that fur coat. And I'm like, how can you wear a fur coat in there? It's got to be like a sauna. To me, it just feels like you're walking into a very humid place, at the pool, and I don't know. But it's like you could feel it. Watching it on screen, you could feel, the atmosphere. So yeah, I would agree. I think now it's super clean. His movies to me now are like missing some of that layering.
Okay, interesting. Jonny, what do you think about that, his direction, in this one especially?
Well, I agree with both you guys about the atmosphere. I think he accomplished that. He did, there's a definite, like you say, you're in New York, that what the setting is, all that. And that's great. I love all that. But if I didn't know it was a Ron Howard movie, I wouldn't know it was a Ron Howard movie. You know what I mean? Like, I would think anybody could have directed this.
Yeah.
I don't think it has like a Ron Howard stamp on it. Not that he really has a stamp of his own with a lot of his movies, because there are a lot of different genres, a lot of different types of movies that he makes. But overall, I think it's fine. I think he got good performances out of the actors. I think he did well with, the camera was moving, and it was fun to look at. It was fun to watch. I will say this: I noticed right away that a lot of the shots started on someone's feet and then panned up to their head, and it was like a little thing that he was doing throughout the entire movie. And I almost expected to have the dog see the dog's paws and then kind of pan up to the dog's face, because it was doing it so much. And then it kept doing it over and over. And so I kept joking about it as I was watching it. But I think Ron Howard must have some kind of like foot fetish or something, but I don't know.
Not quite Tarantino, right?
Yeah, but it was still well done. And I think that was, somewhat stylized. And so I think it was good. And but I don't think it's his best work that he's done, but I think it was good.
Okay. Well, like we talked about plenty of times, and Jeannette, you might think the same thing, but like comedy it's hard to have a personal stamp and be stylish when it's a comedy, unless you're like Wes Anderson, very stylized. It's hard because you want to just sit back and let the actors do what they do, or let them deliver their dialogue, however it is. So it's a hard balance. And I agree with you, even though it was atmospheric for a Ron Howard movie, still anybody could have directed it. But when I say that, is his comic timing, is the way that he's able to film the comedy beats and get cut at the right moments where he doesn't let the actors go on too long. I think as far as direction goes, I think it's solid, but without being flashy. That might be my drawback with Ron Howard, is that I don't think he's ever made a bad, well, the Grinch movie was kind of garish and ugly and didn't really suit him, but I don't think he's made like a bad movie where I watched it going, ooh, that the filmmaking on that was terrible. Like, he's a competent director.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think experience on Happy Days, though, you're working with those little bits. You don't have a lot of time to draw out scenes. Everything just snaps right along. And so I think that really helped him a lot with this film, because you know how you can watch Saturday Night Live and you're like, your skit ended 5 minutes ago, like the life, you guys already hit that mark and you're still going, I think that's what works in this film, is that he is already in that quick, let's make our point and move on, let's hit those comedy notes and move on. There's no need to linger too long in things. And then the moments where things are vulnerable, he lets them kind of sit there. I think working on a sitcom for so long kind of helped him probably in the editing and keeping the pacing in those comedic moments.
And I think that's a great point. I think that is interesting. Again, he's not showy, but he's solid. I think because in our Dirty Rotten Scoundrels episode, there's a scene where Steve Martin is in a jail cell and he's trying to remember Lawrence. What was the line, Johnny? You probably know it better than me.
Lawrence Jameson.
Yes, we're like this, that kind of thing. And the story is that Frank Oz let Steve Martin go, but then he had somebody off screen when Frank Oz thought, okay, that's enough. He had somebody yank on Steve Martin's pant leg so he would know when to stop. And the difference between that and, say, Toys with Robin Williams, where Barry Levinson just lets Robin Williams go for no reason. It doesn't fit his character. He's just, oh, it's Robin Williams, I'm not going to stop him, obviously. But it's off-putting in a way, because it's like, am I watching a movie or am I watching a stand-up routine?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's, as a director, you have to know when to cut. And like you said, there's the manic stuff, Jeannette, but he lets the stronger emotional beats land and draws them out. I think with Keaton's performance, especially, for me, it never tipped over into being annoying to the point where I was like, shut up. Like, I don't want to hear you anymore. I just thought he had an energy, and especially, what was it I had at the end? He had a lot of great lines, but in that scene after they've been arrested and they're in the lawyers, and he just has line after line after line is just gold. He has he goes, if I let you not do anything, if I let you walk out of here without making a bigger stink, I'd never be able to sleep with myself again. That made me laugh. When they start fighting, Bill goes, Chuck, I'm wearing white. That made me laugh. And then what killed me was when Chuck is attacking with the tennis racket, and he goes, what did he say? Chuck, you got to keep that elbow stiff. I lost it. He's absolutely so funny. And I just think it's a character. It's not Michael Keaton. It's actually a character. And yeah, Keaton has that energy, but it's more in line with what they're trying to get across. Johnny, you wanted to talk about the performances, and we've talked about Winkler and Shelley Long, but what is it about Michael Keaton that we love? And especially, what is it about him in this movie that made us, because I think this is the movie, even though I don't remember it, this is the movie that my first memory of Michael Keaton is in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, I mean, obviously Michael Keaton makes this movie for me. I think he's the reason why I enjoy it so much, or enjoyed it again this time watching it. But I don't know. I think, like you say, he has an energy. He has like a presence, and the camera likes him, and he has that natural, he can deliver his lines really naturally. It's really believable. Everything, and that energy is there, and it's exciting. He's fun to watch. And so I think that's why he has that. As far as my memory of Keaton, my first time seeing him on screen was Johnny Dangerously. I think that's the movie I saw him in the first time. But I mean, obviously there's lots of movies he's been in that are great. Like, I love Beetlejuice. I love him in Batman. I didn't say I love him, but he's okay. He's okay in Batman. But
he's the least embarrassing thing about Batman.
I mean, he's okay in Batman. What else has he done? Multiplicity. He's pretty good in Multiplicity. There's lots of good performances that he's been in. I like him as an actor a lot.
Jeannette, your head was kind of ready to explode. Are you a Batman fan? Keaton is Batman fan?
He is my only Batman. Okay.
Yeah, we had to talk about that in our Batman episode where I think he's okay. He's adequate, but he's not my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Bale is second for me.
Okay, yeah, and I think Keaton is great in Batman because like it's come out since they made the movie. There was a writer's strike, and so a lot of the problems with that movie is the writing was there, but they couldn't flesh it out and make it work. And so Keaton comes in, and again, there was that backlash where nobody wanted him to be Batman. And by the end of the movie, everybody was like, "Yeah, he's Batman," just because of the attitude that he had, and he kept bringing these interesting choices to the role that aren't in the script. If you just go off the page, the words on the page, it's such a boring character, and it's Keaton that brings the humanness and the little quirks to it. So again, I just always like him. I like him. Like I don't know what it is. Even like his dramatic roles. I know Clean and Sober was the one that kind of got everybody's attention as far as he can do stuff besides Beetlejuice and stuff like that. And seeing him in
My Life is another one that he's great in. My Life.
Yep. And that's again, I think that comes down to the writing and the tone that you have, and he plays to that instead of the movie trying to match him. He just comes in and matches what the movie needs.
Right.
And I think that's important. Johnny, like you said, I think Shelley Long isn't, I like her. Like the thing that I was noticing this time is when she's on screen for the first time, I'm like, oh yeah, she's really pretty. Like you forget that a lot of the time. Like she's pleasing to the eyes, and she's fine. And I just think that she doesn't have a lot of range. She is the same in almost everything, but Cary Grant didn't really have a lot of range. We still liked him. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then Henry Winkler, you talked about that. I know that the interview he gave is he wanted to be Richie Cunningham for once instead of the Fonz. Okay. But there is something when you see him as the Fonz, as Fonzie, it's seeing him like this. It's it takes some getting used to, but he's playing a character. And I think I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I like it too. I just wish there was more to that character. I wish I didn't latch on to him like I wanted to, and so that was my issue with it. I wanted to like him more than I did. Okay. So, Jeannette, was there anything you wanted to add about the performances? Anything you wanted to bring up or talk about?
I think Shelley Long did a really good job with what she was given. I think she has, a bit of a character arc. She goes from streetwalker to call girl. I mean, from trashy to classy. And we get to see that progression. She is pretty, and she doesn't have a lot of range. It's just slightly different from Money Pit, it's just an edge. She wears so many similar costumes and everything that, so she's obviously conservative because even in Cheers, she's wearing similar clothes, that all these other characters would be, and her hair doesn't really change much. She was still really pleasing to me and believable to me. Chuck and Henry Winkler, I thought it was really sweet and decent. And I thought he did play a really good pushover that finally gets his guts, with that, the turning point with the mustard in his egg salad. So, I think he had a pretty good arc, and we got to see a lot of sweet moments, and maybe because it was such a departure from Fonzie. But I don't know. I thought they all did really, really well for the parts that they were given. And I can't see anybody else doing them. Sometimes when you're watching a film and you're like, oh, this guy's been miscast. I would have put this person in. And I really can't think of another combination. I think I read somewhere that Ron Howard, he tested 200 people before getting Michael Keaton, or before deciding on Michael Keaton and Shelley Long, it took them a while too, and she came on board at the last minute after she did some research because she was going to turn it down. And so you kind of just wonder if the movie gods are really staying on track. Like, no, you got to do it. No, you've got to do it, because the chemistry was there, and it would be weird. Like, who would you put in their place? Who would you cast?
I think.
Who would you cast to balance off of Michael Keaton?
Yeah.
You know?
I think everybody does the job that they're supposed to do. As far as what's on the page, there's nobody comes up short. It's just there isn't quite enough meat on the bones, I guess you could say, to make it stand out more, but it's adequate. It does what it needs to do. It has Keaton in there to offset the stuff that's okay. That's pretty good. That's the, you know, the what'll please the audiences and stuff like that. So, you know, there's a good balance there. Was there, before we move on to our final segment, was there any other notes or things that you noticed that you either of you wanted to bring up? I've got at least one that I wanted to mention, but does anybody else have any thoughts?
Well, I only want to mention the when he's explaining the prostitution meaning of the word. I think that was one of the best things about the whole movie, when he's like breaking it down to pros and tit and then two and then Sean, you don't need that. It was hilarious.
And then, you know, how Chuck comes in there and he, you know, what Belinda tells him, tell him what you told me. And he's a good salesman. And then as the girls are talking and Bill is like, you didn't push it enough. I don't think you were there. And then the girls come back and they're all for it. And he goes, no, it's great. You got to know when to stop.
Yeah.
Just so funny. Jeannette, were there any other scenes or comedy bits you wanted to bring up? Or you said lines of dialogue. You remember those?
I don't know. I mean, it's just chock full. So, you know, aside from just quoting it from start to finish, you know, there were so many great moments. Oh, when Chuck is strapped to, because we haven't talked about that, you know, when Bill brings the cops, you know, to the morgue, and they're turning Chuck into a human sprinkler, and then the bullets are flying, you're the cops, you know, and then afterwards he's like, oh my gosh, you know, you just laid there and you didn't say anything, you know, and he's like, take the tape off. He's like, Bill, you're just so oblivious. Like, he's so amazed. Like, what else was he supposed to do? He was strapped to the table, spinning. And there's just so many sweet, oblivious, totally, you know, honest moments with Bill. Like, how can you not love that guy?
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Want to kill him at the same time.
Absolutely, that's a hard balance to get, right?
Yes, he's perfect.
Right. So the only other thing that I wanted to bring up, I think we've basically talked about everything, but I had to go back because in the credits you see that Kevin Costner plays frat boy number 1. And I had to go back. It's during Johnny. You know what part I'm talking about? Where I think it's his first or second part. I had to rewind it. It's the part where they go to the morgue and Bill's throwing that crazy party, and it's a shot where Chuck is trying to find him, and Bill has the bottle on his face, and right behind him is Kevin Costner in his first, like one of his first on-screen roles, and he's so young and flat-faced that it's hard to recognize him. But yeah, that's Kevin Costner just right there. I got a big, and he doesn't say anything. He's just mostly just doing motions, and then he kind of slinks off camera. But yep. There's my Field of Dreams guy, you know, just sitting in the background.
Yeah, I gotta say I missed him. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's once you notice that it's him, you notice that it's him. But okay, so Jeannette, I guess we're finally down to, at the end of every episode, we want to come down to, you know, we have the whole thing of everybody like rebooting and remaking everything. And is it worth getting upset over if you find out something is being remade, or is it like, oh yeah, I could definitely see them like remaking that? As far as Night Shift 1982, directed by Ron Howard, goes, how do you think this is worth remembering, or do you think this is worth a remake? Do you think they could do better, or should it just exist as is?
No, it needs to be left alone. It needs to be sent, a physical copy needs to be sent to Martin Scorsese ASAP for his film restoration project, and just put into a vault and never to be toyed with. I think because it was Ron Howard's first film. There's so many things that make it great for what it is. There are so many firsts, it's Ron Howard's first, it's Michael Keaton's first, it's Kevin Costner's first. It's Quarter Flashes. They became a band up here in Oregon in 1980. And here they're doing the opening credits for a major Hollywood picture. And Ron Howard did a weird thing that we don't get to see. And he actually put it up in the opening credits. It's the very first opening credit title card you see is Quarter Flash, is the song, You've got Burt Bacharach doing the music with Carol Bayer Sayer. And he wrote That's What Friends Are for this movie. And then eventually Dionne Warwick and friends, they make a huge huge song with it, with all those celebrities. But it started here. So to recreate the energy and the excitement and the creativity of doing this first film, and trying to, because if they did a reboot, then, who would you cast as these three main characters? Again, I think you mentioned it would be more NC-17, probably would have to be raunchier. And I feel like it would lose that innocent prostitution in the morgue kind of feel, like family friendly prostitution movie. Because I don't know, I feel like the energy would be lost. I don't think you can really recreate this one without
losing something,
and how do you recreate Michael Keaton? How do you, even though it is not like an exact remake or whatever, but whoever takes that role as Bill Blazkowski is just going to be a caricature of Michael Keaton. So I feel like, no, just leave it. That's me. Okay. How about you guys?
Johnny, what do you think?
Make or keep?
Well, it wouldn't bother me if they remade it. Like, I wouldn't mind. But I probably wouldn't go see it if they did. Like, because you say it would be raunchier. I wouldn't really want to go see that movie. I don't need to go see, a Judd Apatow or Seth Rogen remake of this movie. I don't need that. I do like a lot of things about this movie. We talked about the script, the acting, some of the things that I like about it. They're really good. My biggest thing, though, is that there were moments where there were these lulls that just like lost me. It would lose me in places. And so if the editing was tighter, if it was like more condensed, it wasn't quite as long as it is. Maybe if it was only an hour and a half, not, what is it, like an hour and 45 minutes, something like that?
Yeah.
It could lose 15 minutes and be tighter and be just, it could be quicker for me and I would enjoy a whole lot more. So because of that slowness, like I could say it could be remade, but like, I think it's still really good. So as where it stands, I think it, should be left alone, like Jeannette said. So I think it's worth remembering, but it wouldn't bother me one bit if they remade it.
Okay. I can see that. There's nothing saying you can't have somebody else come in and do Keaton's role and have it work. But what if you tried it and it didn't work? What if you tried it and it fell flat on its face?
Yeah.
To me, I think this movie, like I talked about with the little bits of humor that come out of nowhere and the humanity, it has a personality. It's not bland. That's something that I really enjoyed about it. Was there were moments where I was just heavy laughter. Like it just struck me like I didn't expect these things. I didn't expect the humanity. So that personality makes it worthwhile. And then again, like we talked about with Richard Pryor in Silver Streak, it's lightning in a bottle. You've got Keaton coming in and he was a star. From the moment he comes on, he is the man. And he's going to be in movies. He's going to be around for the rest of our lives. And that's hard to match. He has the dialogue that he delivers perfectly. He's got the character. So I'm absolutely with you guys. It's not the greatest thing since sliced bread. It does what it needs to do. I just think that it would be I don't know, you'd lose something in the redo, I think. So I definitely think it's worth remembering as well. So Jeannette, you picked a good one. We appreciate you coming on again. It's been great getting to you've got a very bright personality, and you're on Twitter or on the internet or social media, which is just a hellscape. You are one of the voices that's bright and positive, and I appreciate that. And for everybody listening, your reviews are fun. I love that you can feel your personality in your reviews. I like the sense of humor. You did what was it, Sea of Love? I liked how you have in your reviews, you talk about the plots, and then you say what I liked and then what I didn't like, and then your final thoughts. And I like first of all, in the Sea of Love, you're like, would these guys have like Sea of Love and a 45 just in their apartment? Like, what if they don't own a record player? I thought that was really funny.
Mm-hmm.
The review that made me laugh was your Star Trek 4 review, where you said what they could have done better. And you said, I wish Catherine Hicks was wearing a bra.
I know. I regret saying that.
Why do you regret that?
I actually don't want her wearing a bra.
I just thought that was very clever.
Yeah, but that's a choice. And I can see why they made the choice. And she actually jokes about that, I guess. I mentioned it and on Twitter, and somebody said, oh yeah, I met her once and she thinks it's really hilarious. But she has a really good attitude about not wearing a bra.
Well, that's good.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, but again, like, it's that personality that you look for when you're reading reviews and everything. So how would people, well, thank you for coming on and gracing us with your presence. We appreciate it. Thank you for coming dressed for the occasion. Where can people find you? I know I talked about the Majestic Theater. If people are looking for you and want to check that out, where can they find you online?
They can go to akajeannette.com, and I have the reviews on there, and I've got a theater page on there, and there are links to Majestic. There are links to those shows on there. And the link takes you to the Majestic Theater's Facebook Live page, where it has all of their videos. So it'll take you straight to that. On Twitter. I'm not on Facebook as much. Facebook is scary. I think I might get away from there. Twitter is more fun. For me, I feel like it's just such a great opportunity to support people. And I think that's what I've ended up doing all this time, is just supporting people, and by retweeting and just be listening to pods and watching all your YouTube. Everybody's so creative, and it's so much fun to hear what everybody has to say. And I love the discourse. I love when we don't agree, because then I usually learn something about a film that I didn't notice before, or just a different point of view. And I like that, because then I'm learning more things. I'm not like, I don't think there's a film that I would say, are you out of your mind? How do you not love this? And then be like, okay, you're cut off. We can't be friends. Because it's so subjective. You either connect with it or you don't. And if I do and you don't, I want to know why. Because but not for any malicious reason. I want to know, what it is. And the opposite, I want people that if I don't connect to a film and somebody else does, I'm like, why do you love it? Like, help me understand why you love it, and then that helps me to see things differently. And that's what I get out of Twitter. So if you're interested in that kind of conversation, that's where I am, AKA Jeannette on Twitter, and akajeannette.com. And you can always message me and we can talk about stuff.
Absolutely. And again, that's our conversations that we had in the past. Exactly that. It's like, how do we learn from each other instead of how to get angry at each other? And I appreciate all your contributions. Thank you for all that you do. And if you'd ever want to come back on, just let me know. Like you said, would love to have you back on to discuss. I'd like to see what new costume you'd be able to dress up in.
I hear a challenge coming. Anytime, you name it.
Okay, great. We've had a blast, and I appreciate it. I'm sure Johnny appreciates it too.
Oh yeah. Thank you very much. That was fun.
Okay, thank you, Jeannette. We love you. Appreciate you coming on. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Jumping jack flash. Hi.
Okay, again, we'd like to thank Jeannette Mickenham for coming on and helping us out. Wonderful conversation. It's great to have, because we're, aside from your wife, it's mostly been a boys show, right? It's it's nice to get a female voice in here, because I like being able to have that different perspective than just what we're used to. I think when we brought Ruth on, and I bring this up a lot, when we brought her on for Labyrinth, I like that we did that, because if we were to cover Labyrinth, which people were requesting, it would have been a hate fest.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed somebody to come on that has a different perspective, because I don't want to be that type of person or that kind of podcast where we just rag on things, especially if we know it means something important to people. So I like having a female perspective, or a POC perspective. Hopefully you want to kind of branch out. And
not only that, but Jeannette, obviously has knowledge about, the industry. She works in theater, she's worked in film, she knows her stuff. And so that was fun to talk to her about that as well. Get her point of view as far as just how things are made and how it works.
Right. So I guess the main point of our conversation is we talked about Michael Keaton a lot, and I know that you and I have a great affinity for him as far as the laughs and the performances that he gave. I know that we talked Batman. I know that we mentioned with Jeannette, that the movie is weak is not Keaton's fault, because he brought what he could to it. It's just the writing isn't there to back him up. It was the same thing with Nicholson, actually.
Yeah.
Nicholson was just a little more front and center. So we wanted to chat. Like we said, Keaton's meant a lot to us. So like we usually do, I wanted to talk maybe our top 3 favorite Michael Keaton performances.
Okay.
Let me ask you before we start, did you pick Night Shift as one of your favorites?
No.
Okay. I think he's awesome in the movie, but and it's a great first start. I just didn't want to rehash what we already talked about. So even though he's great in Night Shift, let's talk some different.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, that's what makes it for me, is his performance in that movie. So that's why I came down.
No. Okay, perfect. So what were your, actually, let me ask you first, why is Michael Keaton, why does he mean something to you? Why do you like him so much?
Well, I mean, he's entertaining, like we talked about. He has a presence. He's fun to watch, and he always makes me laugh. Not just that, but he's talented. He's a good actor, and he's good at, I mean, I can mention this movie. Probably the one that I saw most recently with him in it is that Birdman movie. I think he has a great performance in that movie. Like maybe not one of his best, but it's great. You know what I mean? So I think just overall, he's a really good actor. So.
Yeah. And like we talked about, he's got an energy to him, and he, like we said, even with Batman, it's what he brings to him that makes that character interesting, and him working with Burton. And that's why I like him. You just, even in a cruddy movie like White Noise, I mean, Keaton, like a lot of these stars, he disappeared for a little bit, and now he's kind of back in the spotlight. I mean, sorry for that pun, but he's made his way back, and he's a name again, even though he's not, other than Birdman, or other than what was the McDonald's one that he did? I can't remember the name of that one.
The Founder.
Yeah, The Founder. Okay, even though he's not, he's not he doesn't dominate the box office, but he's there, and it's good to have him back. And like I mentioned, White Noise, he was gone for a while, and he came back for that movie. And I don't like that movie, but I think he's solid in it. And I remember thinking, I like this guy. He's good even in something like this.
Yeah, very likable. I saw him in person at Sundance when I saw Game 6.
Okay.
So I got to be a part of the question answer and see him give his feedback about the movie. So that was fun.
How was he? He seems very personable and likable.
Very personal. Yeah, really likable. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So what was your, as far as your top 3 Keaton movies goes, what was your first one that you picked?
right, number one, I'm gonna go with Beetlejuice.
Okay.
And I say that because I just love this character. I love the way he portrays the character, and I love the voice that he came up with for Beetlejuice. And I just love it. It always makes me laugh, and I always go back to that. But it's my number one Michael Keaton performance is Beetlejuice.
Okay. Well, I'm going to cross that off because I had, we always have these overlaps. And so that's one of the ones that I did pick. I know I mentioned that Night Shift was the one that got my radar going, but I do remember Beetlejuice being this guy, like this Keaton guy. Who is this guy? And stuff like that. So I guess the first one that, trying to go in order here, if actually maybe not even in order, as far as like kind of like a Beetlejuice-esque performance, I really like him in Much Ado About Nothing.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
What's his name in that one? Dogberry. He's got he's Beetlejuice, obviously, but he delivers his lines that it's just funny enough that he comes on and he says what he needs to say and he makes an impression and makes you laugh, and then he walks off. And again with Shakespeare, we talked about, what was the movie we talked about where they didn't really nobody did great as Shakespeare? Do you remember the movie we talked about?
Yeah, no,
it was Much Ado About Nothing when we talked about Keanu Reeves, even Denzel. Right. Everybody kind of, aside from Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson and Briars, they have the main company of Shakespeare. Some of them seemed a bit of an odd fit. Robert Sean Leonard, Keanu Reeves, obviously. Denzel Washington, like we said, wasn't as dynamic as you'd expect him to be. But Keaton, even though I don't know if he sells the language of it, he's enough of a character that you believe that he's that person and he's funny. Yeah. So Much Ado is my first choice. What was your second choice?
Second for me is a movie called Pacific Heights. And I picked this one because it's a departure from his comedic roles that he usually plays. And he plays this, really intense villain, I would call it, because he ends up being, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a pretty good movie. Pretty intense. But yeah, so it was kind of a surprising to see him in a role like that for the first time. And so that's always stuck with me, is his performance in Pacific Heights.
Playing, I think I revisited Pacific Heights about a month or two ago. It was on Netflix or Amazon. And I remember him being kind of a bastard. He's an evil, character that tries to make Griffith and Modine's life a living hell. But there's also the thing about he's got people on his case, and that's why he needs to be the way that he is. Like there's a desperation to him. And so he is a character instead of just the threat the whole time. Yeah. So that's a good choice. If I were to go again, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to offset and go with like a samey performance to go along with what you're talking about. Okay. And I really liked him in Spider-Man Homecoming. That one is not my favorite Spider-Man. That's something that we can go into. It doesn't seem like the Spider-Man that I grew up with, and maybe that's on me. But as far as his character in that, Keaton's character is one of the few characters in the MCU that feels like an honest to goodness person. He's a character that's trying to, he's obviously got a family to support, and Tony Stark has screwed him over. And so he's kind of had this this kind of criminal business, like taking all this technology and selling it. But he's got that, I identified with him because I've lost a job. I've been in a situation where it's been like, how am I going to support my family? What do I need to do? And so that was identifiable. Yeah. And the scene that absolutely works in that movie is when Peter Parker's decided to give up being Spider-Man and he just wants to be a kid. And he shows up at his girlfriend's house, and his girlfriend's dad is it's Keaton's character. And there's that whole drama is, what is he going to say or how is he going to react? And Keaton's scene with Tom Holland in that car where he threatens him and says, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that my family survives, and that he's a real threat, but you can see where the threat comes from. Keaton really pulled that off, and I like that a lot. He's great in that one.
Okay. I like that one. Number 3?
Yep. Number 3.
All right. Number 3 for me is, we mentioned it in the episode, and I think we've talked about it before too, when we talked about Batman. We talked about My Life. And this is a movie with him and Nicole Kidman. He has cancer, he's dying, and he's making these videos for his, future son, because he's going to die before his son is born. And it's a really heartwarming movie, and there's a scene at the end of the movie, and I always go back to this too, when his dad is dying, or is it he? Yeah, I think he's shaving his dad, right?
His dad is shaving him.
His dad is shaving him. That's right, because he is dying, and so his dad is shaving him, and they just have this moment, and it always brings me to tears every time. I can't watch it, even though I know it's coming. I think, okay, I'm not going to cry this time. I cry every time I see that movie, every time I see that scene. And it's the performance that he gives that always leads me to that point. And so I just think he's a phenomenal actor, and I like his performance in my life.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great one. It doesn't just tug at the heartstrings, it yanks at those heartstrings.
Yeah.
One of my favorite memories is taking my girlfriend at the time. We went to go see the movie, and when it ended, we walked out, and obviously she had to go into the bathroom to fix her makeup, and there was just a row of just guys just by themselves standing while their girlfriends or their significant others were inside the bathroom touching up their makeup because they were all crying, and all of us just looking at each other. Yeah, I know why we're here. I just thought, that was it had a good impact. So, I said I was trying to offset, and I could go with Clean and Sober, which is his first real dramatic role that taught everybody he could do that. I loved him in Spotlight, but that was more of he could play a part of an ensemble.
Ensemble, right.
Yeah. He was awesome in Birdman. I think the only difference is I don't really like Birdman as much. It felt like a movie. It didn't feel like an experience.
I disagree with that. I think Birdman was definitely an experience because of their whole trying to make it one shot. You know what I mean? I thought that was really cool. It's been done before, but I think they executed it better than other movies have tried in the past. So I think it's where they failed. Also, it had the all percussion score, and so that drew me in right away, and I was hooked when I knew that's what they were doing right from the beginning. And everybody gives great performances in that movie. So
okay, yeah, that's again, I don't want to say that it's a bad movie. I just think when it's long shots and stuff like that, that's when I start noticing the artifice. I don't feel it as much as they're trying to draw it to. So, but I think it's a nice little technical exercise, and he's awesome in it. So I know a lot of people pick that. I know a lot of people are going to pick the Batman movies, but kind of just to break it, I can't go without. I could mention The Paper. I could mention One Good Cop. He's good in almost everything. I loved how he showed up in The Other Guys, just spouting TLC lyrics. So funny. But if I'm going to go with I guess you're talking about him being dramatic. I like that he was able to make fun and something you weren't expecting. I like that he's able to make fun of himself as Ken in Toy Story 3. I think he is so funny. Just the way that Ken is kind of this effeminate, like a clothes horse, and the way that Keaton is able to tweak that and make him a character. I just, even watching that, you're like, he can just do a cartoon voice, and I'll love this guy.
Yeah.
So I could, I said,
he does the voice of the Cars character, right? He does the
Chick Hicks, right?
Yeah.
The Kachinga, that, and he's good in that one too. I just like that he's like, Keaton wanted to, he could just do voice acting, and he could make it. So. Yeah. Again, I feel weird because you mentioned Beetlejuice, and I went with Much Ado. You went with what was the second one? The Pacific Heights, and I went with Spider-Man. But then I was like, well, how can I offset my life other than doing the obvious ones? But I can't go without mentioning Toy Story 3. I just think he's riot in that one. So what I did is when we settled on our topic, our top 3, I decided to, since I'm a little more comfortable on Twitter and not getting crickets, I put a question out there saying, because they announced today, we talked in the Batman episode how Keaton has been confirmed that he's coming back to play Batman in the Flash movie they're making. Then it was iffy for a while, but now he's back for sure. Today, his publicist announced that he will be playing Batman, Bruce Wayne, in that new one. So I put a question out saying, speaking of Michael Keaton, what is everybody's favorite Michael Keaton performances? If you name this for me, I'll give you a shout out. And so I have a list of people here. I've got MC Myers, good friend. He voted Birdman, Clean and Sober, and Batman Returns. Okay. Kevin the Critic, who we just talked about at the beginning of the episode, he picked Beetlejuice, The Other Guys, and Pacific Heights. So 2 of yours. McNeil and friends, they picked Batman Returns. They picked Birdman. They picked Spider-Man Homecoming. My so-called pop culture life, they picked Batman, Birdman, and Beetlejuice Man. I like that they did that. Movies after work, they said Birdman, Desperate Measures, which is another him playing a bad guy, and Gung Ho, which was his next collaboration with Ron Howard.
Okay.
Thomas M. Willett said Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. You got to watch out when you say that 3 times. Daddy-O says Birdman, Batman Returns, Clean and Sober. Greg Gaynor says Johnny Dangerously, which you mentioned.
Yep.
Batman and American Assassin, which I believe is just a recent one. Green Shirt says Multiplicity. You like that one, didn't you?
I was going to mention that one, but it was like my honorable mention. So
okay, good. Batman, Beetlejuice. The Lone Wolf says Batman, The Paper, and Spotlight.
okay.
Mark Evan Naff says Johnny Dangerously, Multiplicity, and The Merry Gentleman, which was just a recent one. And the let's see, want to make sure that I get this one. The Real Dr. VA, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, says Batman, Multiplicity, and Beetlejuice. So a lot of these, we're finding a lot of these people picking, like Beetlejuice comes up a lot, Batman comes up a lot, Birdman comes up a lot, but that's because they're iconic performances.
Yeah.
I think that's hard for an actor to do. And Keaton, memorable. He's likable, and he never comes off as, when even Pacific Heights, when he's bad, it's like you don't want him to be bad, even though you're kind of afraid of him, and you don't want him to die, even though he has to die. Spoiler for that movie, but. Mm-hmm. Keaton is always going to have a soft spot in my heart. He's not my favorite Batman, but that's not because of him. It's more because of the writing and how that was done. The character was molded. But I can, if somebody says Michael Keaton's their favorite Batman, like Jeannette did, it's like, you're not going to get an argument from me. I think he's great. I think he was one of the few actors to play Batman as this neurotic kind of psychopath, as somebody who's not well balanced, which is what Batman needs. And he's one of the actors that was able to do that. So again, Michael Keaton, great hero of ours. So did you have anything else to add to our Keaton discourse?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay, good. So, you're still in the process of moving, and so we're kind of still up in the air, but we do have our next episode planned. It's with, I want to get his name right. I don't want to miss it. Dallin, the film fanatic. He's one of our younger fans. He's agreed to come on. And again, he gave me some choices, and I won't go into all the choices that he picked, but some were like, well, that seems like it would be really familiar. This seems like it'd be really familiar. The movie that he picked that sounds great, the one that we settled on, is Secondhand Lions.
Okay.
With Michael Caine, Haley Joel Osment, and
is it Robert Duvall?
Yeah, Robert Duvall. He's the other guy. So I think I've only seen bits and pieces of it. Have you seen Secondhand Lions?
Yeah.
Okay. Good memories, bad memories?
It was forgettable.
Okay.
I saw it, but I didn't really remember much about it.
All right. Well, maybe we'll watch it again and then see if it has how old is it? 2000, so it's 21 years. Wow. Michael Caine and Robert Duvall are still alive. That's impressive. Okay, so next time we'll have our fourth guest in a row. Dallin, the film fanatic, will be on to discuss Secondhand Lions with us. Can't wait to have that conversation. But until then, once again for NostalgiaCast, I'm Darin Lundberg.
And I'm Johnny Craddock.
And we'll see you next time, guys.